Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Iello's Around the World in 80 Days. Then we look back at the Dukes review of Signorie in our Dukes Double-Take. And finally, we discuss oldies but goodies when it comes to games. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And that was a long and.
I don't need your criticism,
No,
Sean.
it's fine. It was great. The and was of an appropriate length. Anyway, this is episode 143, The Family Jules. Family Jules, not the kind that you would wear in a crown.
Or
a ring.
wear on your body.
Or on yes? Okay.
You know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, sure.
Family show.
We're talking about Jules, as in Jules Verne, who wrote Around the World in 80 Days. Signorie is all about these Italian Renaissance families. So that's an excellent title, thanks to Jimmy DM90.
Yes.
So great job, Jimmy. And just so you all know out there, we get some help, a little help from our friends, more specifically our Dukes of Dice Guild over on Board Game Geek, where every week people join in on our Dukes on Deck to help talk about the games we're going to be talking about in the episode and also help name the episodes. So definitely go check that out. And we'll have runners up at the end. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing better than you.
I am like super congested from allergies, and it's like even in my chest. And so I feel a little nasally right now, sound a little nasally. I was a little raspier earlier. I think I'm a bit better.
I woke up that way, but now I feel better.
That's good. That's good. Hopefully I'll wake up tomorrow and feel better myself.
Sniffly Duke Sean.
I know. I wonder how many sniffles are going to have to be edited out.
We'll find out.
So anyway, just want to do a couple bits of show business before we jump into the episode. We had a brand new review go up this week on dukesofdice.com. Our buddies Matthew and Matt, who are collectively known as Wham! We are Matt. They just produced an awesome written review of Hanamakoji, a game that I think has quickly become a Duchy favorite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably a 6 for me.
5 or 6 for me. I hope we don't actually do a featured review now.
Why?
Well, because we just kind of spoiled it.
Well, okay.
All right. So anyway, go check out over at dukesdice.com one of the Wham reviews. And
Wham is the alternative bizarro version of Wham.
Yes.
Where Matthew is not grumpy.
Anyway, go check that out. They've got, I think that's their 4th or 5th that they've put up now. And what's nice is they're these like short little pithy reviews where it packs a ton of information, kind of like a Wham. It's the review version of the onomatopoeic Wham.
Awesome.
Do you like how I use onomatopoeia as an adjective?
Well sold.
Yeah. Also, just like to mention this from time to time, that it's really helpful if you guys want to go over and give us some iTunes reviews. We definitely appreciate that.
Share and enjoy.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And then finally, if you're looking for Star Wars Destiny content, and who's not, right?
I'm not.
Oh,
not currently.
Oh, you'd like the game well enough, but not the buying and the constructing of decks.
Right. Buying 2 booster boxes just so you can play.
I almost sounded like Professor Frink there with the buying of the decks and the glaving. No, Professor Frink from The Simpsons, who's really...
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
who's actually
okay.
Jerry Lewis.
Sorry, you're very bad at voices, so I don't get these all the time.
It's my sniffles right now. Anyway, so recently I put up a live unboxing of a Star Wars Destiny booster that I did with Duke Suzanne. So we went through, opened up all our boosters, showed everyone what we got. It was pretty cool. And then I also did a quick YouTube Dukes of Dice daily video deck construction on my Emperor Palpatine deck, which I'm very excited to try that out. So go check out that YouTube content, some of the other videos that are up there. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Sean, what have you been playing this week?
Oh boy, Alex, this was an interesting week. Speaking of collectible games, I have been playing some Magic the Gathering. In fact, I'm going to kind of go back a couple weeks. I played it this week, but also a couple weeks ago. There was a new set that came out. It's called Amonkhet. It has this Egyptian flavor to it. And the pre-release happened, I think it's like you said, about 2 weeks ago now. I went over to another friendly local game store, Active Imagination. That's the shop that we played at quite a bit before Empire came in town. And they ran a fantastic pre-release tournament. It's actually Sun Mesa Games, who's kind of a regional company that they're based here in Albuquerque, and they run all these Magic events. Got to see our buddy Bob. who's a tournament judge and helped run that. So the Amonkhet set is really cool. Like I said, it has that Egyptian theme, and there's all of these Egyptian, well, not Egyptian, but Egyptian-like gods. So these different animal gods, like there's this crane god and these cat gods, and it's really cool. There are some new mechanics that it introduces. It introduces Entomb, which when you have a creature in the graveyard, you can pay its Entomb cost, and you basically remove that card from the game, but you get a copy of it, a token of it, in play. So you get to kind of dual use those creatures. There's also a new mechanic called Exert. So when you attack with the creature, you can choose to exert it. If you do, it won't untap during the next untap step, but it gives you some sort of neat special ability. And then it also brings back two older mechanics, Cycle, which is something that lets you pay some mana, or usually to discard it to draw a card, and there's some other effects. And also has split cards, which I had never actually played during a time when split cards were originally in play, like 10, 15 years ago. So it's cool to kind of see it. It's basically there are two cards on one card, and it's an interesting thing. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. I really enjoy these pre-release tournaments. I had a strange record, Alex.
What was that?
1, 0, and 3. I won
so
one.
3 ties.
3 ties, 3 draws. And that happens when you go to time. And yeah. But interestingly, when I was there, by the way, great time, had a great time. But when I was there, I ran into Andres, he works over at Empire Board Game Library. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you played Magic. He's like, oh yeah, I've been playing for a while. So we hung out a little bit there. And then we've been talking about playing some Commander, formerly known as Elder Dragon Highlander, which is a format that's my absolute favorite way to play Magic, where basically you have a 100-card deck, no duplicate cards except for basic lands, and it's kind of built around a particular legendary creature. And I said, hey, have you ever played this? He's like, no. I said, okay, well, maybe Wednesday I'll bring my cards and we can play some Commander decks. And we did. We spent about, 45 minutes, an hour, had about 5 or 6 matches of Commander. A lot of fun. You know, like always, I just feel like there's a lot of hate for Magic. Everyone's kind of like looking at us like, ugh, what are you guys doing over there? But I still love this game. It's still absolutely fantastic. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, whether it's the constructed Commander format, which is a little bit more casual, or whether it's playing in tournaments in sealed format. It's just a ton of fun. So still a big fan of Magic, and Amonkhet was really cool. I may play some Magic Online in the next couple of weeks with this new set and just do some drafting or something. So, because I love playing draft too. So that is my recent experience playing Magic the Gathering.
Good thing you have a lot of money being an attorney to buy all this collectible card game stuff.
I'm not paying that much for Magic.
How many lifestyle games are you in currently?
I am in 1.
Just 1?
I'm playing Magic casually.
Okay.
I spent $30 the other week.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Especially given that you bought the 2 Destiny boosters. Anyway, I'm not criticizing.
You are criticizing.
Actually, I'm not. I'm not criticizing at all. Though I have not found myself more interested in Magic since getting more into board and card games. I think mainly because of the whole having to pay a lot to play. We've
done this.
I know.
We've gone round and round.
I know.
There are multiple formats where that's not the case.
All right.
But anyway, I literally have 6 decks upstairs that are all pauper decks that are made exclusively.
Pauper decks.
They're made exclusively.
Oh, that's such a pompous. That is such a pompous term.
Of common cards that are very fun, very competitive, especially against one another. Pauper, Alex. You can be a Magic pauper.
That is the most pompous thing I've ever heard.
I'll pop you.
What? That doesn't even make any sense.
I'm a pauper, so I pop you. I pop thee.
All right.
Why don't you talk about it?
We are
Alex?
way off the rails. I'm going to talk about a board game, and this one is Coldwater Crown, which I've seen around Empire a lot lately. I've seen it at the table at our Wednesday night game nights, and Cameron had recommended this as one to pull out and try. I don't think this has been discussed on the show because I don't think you've played this one yet,
It
Sean.
has been discussed on the show. I believe Jeremy discussed it in the previous episode.
I should probably listen to these.
Thanks for listening to the Dukes of Dice podcast, Alex.
Yep. Sorry, Jeremy. All right. Coldwater Crown. I don't know what he said at the time. I know he does like it. I can tell you I like this one quite a bit as well. Coldwater Crown, it's put out by Bellwether Games, designed by Brian Suhr. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a fishing game where you're basically trying to catch different kinds of fish from different regions. There's the lake, the shores, and I think a stream or something along those lines.
All water-based.
All water-based. You catch the fish by removing different kinds of bait from your board. So once you clear a section of your board off, you are able to catch a fish of that appropriate zone from the area you pulled it from. The action selection on a typical turn works. You're going to put a disc out and pull another disc off. So you're taking 2 actions on a turn. And you'll either put a 1 or 2 disc down, and then you'll pull a 1 or 2 disc off and get certain actions or abilities depending on how that goes. Really slickly designed, very thematic, and a ton of fun. Everyone seems to think you won't like this one, Sean.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know.
I mean, the theme doesn't jump out at me.
It's not, well, I'm not big into fishing either. I think I've gone fishing once or twice in my entire life.
Oh, I've gone way more than that.
Okay, then maybe you'll connect with this a bit. Even not going fishing, I connected pretty well with this one thematically, and there's enough cool mechanics in here that it all clicks together and works really well. So I'd give a strong recommendation to Coldwater Crown. It played really well. We actually had a tie game, and it comes down to who caught their fish, one of their fish they submitted the earliest. And whoever had the earliest fish caught wins the game on the tie. That's the tiebreaker. So I won by 4 minutes on that tiebreaker.
Okay.
Anyway, a lot of fun. I recommend checking it out. If you see it on the shelf or see it in the library somewhere, give it a try. It's a good amount of fun. I enjoyed this one. I don't know if I'll pick it up, mainly because I don't have a house.
And you don't pick up games typically?
I pick up games, but usually when I'm picking up games, it's either stuff that'll sit on a shelf of shame, or stuff that I'm going to play with family, or stuff from Kickstarter. And if I'm backing something on Kickstarter, that's usually a bad sign for the game. Usually because I make poor decisions on Kickstarter.
Yes.
Either in that I won't play the game a lot, or it won't be a very good game. So, yeah, for all the big talk here, I'm not very good at buying games often. It's true. It's true. But this is one I definitely like. I don't know if I'll pick it up, but I think it's worth giving it a look at. If you engage at all with a fishing theme, or even a little bit of that sounds interesting, check out Coldwater Crown.
So we got to play Parade, which is a recent reprint from Z-Man Games. It was originally published in 2007. It's designed by Naoki Homa, and this is a beautiful game. So the first thing that comes to mind with this game is Arboretum, also from Z-Man Games, designed by Dan Kassar, where it kind of has the beautiful green backs with some filigree. This is kind of similar, except they're purple cards, and it has an Alice in Wonderland theme. So it has this really whimsical art of the different Alice in Wonderland characters. So there's Alice and the Mad Hatter and the Queen of Hearts, and the Cheshire Cat is actually on the back of the cards. And you have this parade of cards in the middle of the table. It's a series of cards, and they range, I believe, from 0 to 10, and there are 6 different colors of cards. And everyone has a hand of 5. And what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your cards and you're going to put it at the end of the parade. Based on the value of card, you're then going to count that many cards down the line. And anything beyond that number, you're going to take those cards and put them in your tableau if they are of an equal or lesser value, or if they match that color. So let's say the parade has 10 cards in it. I play the 11th card, and I play the blue 7. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 3 cards outside of those 7. Are you with me so far, Alex?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say one of them is a 2, one of them's a 3, and one of them's an 8. Well, I'll pick up the 2. I'll pick up the 3 because it's less. They're both equal to or less than 7. The 8 I won't pick up unless the 8 happens to be blue, which is the color of card I played. All right. A little confusing, but it's fine. Once you see it on the table, it's totally fine. There's some shifting of the parade, just kind of keep everything centered. Now, here's how scoring works. At the end of the game, which is triggered either when you run through the draw deck or when one player has all 6 colors in front of them, you're going to score points in it. This is golf scoring, so you want to score low. You don't want points. But you will score either the number of cards you have of each color or the value of those cards. And it's determined by who has the most cards in a particular color. So if I have 4 green cards, Alex, and you have 3 green cards, I'm going to score 4 points, but we're going to add up the points on your 3 green cards. So maybe it's a 3, a 7, and a 6. Quick math, 16. You score 16 points. I've scored 4. And we do that for all the colors. Lowest points wins. Okay. Kind of a little weird to visualize there, but this was interesting. We played it 3 players, and chaotic is not the right word, but it was really difficult. It was a weird experience because I was collecting some cards. Rory was collecting some cards. Throughout the entire game, Matthew managed to collect 2 cards. Certainly possible, obviously, to do that, but I think it was an outlier. I don't think that's typical. So sometimes you'll play a low card and everything, or not everything, but a lot of cards are eligible because it's a low card. You're not going to collect that many. It just really depends. I definitely want to play this again. I was really enthused when I started playing this. I'm like, ooh, this is really cool. But then towards the end, I was just like, this is kind of weird. But I think it's because there was such an outlier with the way Matthew was picking up cards. There's so few of them. So I'm definitely interested to try this again. Yeah, it was fun. It was quick enough. I think it was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops. So definitely go check out Parade from Z-Man, and I'll report back when I get another play in, because I'm sure I'll get another play in pretty soon. So
very good. All right, this week, Sean, we got in some games together for the first time in a while at Empire, and we got a Mars 445, which is something you got off of Kickstarter. That's kind of Nerds-esque game where you're building colonies and sending ships off. That was fine. But the real gem, Sean, that we played together was Shiba Inu House.
Do you mean the real jewel?
No.
Because that's part of the name of the episode?
Yeah, I know what you're referencing, but that's not what I meant.
Go on.
Anyway.
Talk about your gem.
So this is from Renegade Games Studios, who's done a number of Dutchy favorites, including Clank.
Clank!
That's the one that comes to mind. There are others.
Grabwell, which I like, you don't.
Yeah, Grabwell's okay. And what are they coming up with?
Honshu coming out soon.
Yeah, Honshu, I really enjoyed that one. This is Shiba Inu House. Basically, you are flipping, it's a speed game. You're flipping over cards of different levels, and you are going to try and build the appropriate doghouse. Each of the houses in your individual stack has a dog doing a certain kind of pose on a certain colored roof. You're trying to find that dog and then find the supporting structures and build doghouses, either 1, 2, or 3, depending on the rounds, doing it as fast as humanly possible in this adorable, adorable game.
Very cute.
Very cute. Sean, how did you like this one?
It was fine. I mean, I don't think we're the intended audience necessarily.
No.
I mean, it's a matching game. It's a speed matching game. This is very similar. Same designer that did Kitty Paw. In Kitty Paw, you had to put your paw up and go meow. You don't have to go meow in this game.
Is that when you're done with the round you do
yes.
that? Ah.
Yeah, and you put your paw up and you go meow. You don't have to do that. You don't have to bark. You don't have to go woof. You don't have to do anything. But still cutesy art. It's good. It's fine. It's fine. We, just like when I talked about Kitty Paw, not the right audience. This is something that Mariah would enjoy quite a bit. Actually, I gave away my copy of Kitty Paw to Max's girlfriend, Amy, when they bought some stuff at the Gamer's Garage. So I'm like, here, have this, because she thought it was cute.
And because you didn't want Mariah to get her hands on it.
Something like that.
Because Mariah probably would have really liked that one.
Yeah. So like Mariah and her friends, or, I mean, even as a drinking game, I mean, that'd be like, we've had a couple beers.
Oh, for sure.
And then we're meowing each other. This was, it was fine. Not one of my preferred Renegade Game Studios, but that's right, because they got plenty of other games I really like.
Yeah, I think that's about where I fall on that one too. So that's Shiba Inu House.
All right. The last one I'll talk about is Exit, the Abandoned Cabin. So this is an escape room in a box. It's published by Cosmos. It's designed by Inca Brand and Marcus Brand, who have designed The Enchanted Tower, Village, and a ton of other games. They have 10 pages.
Was she on Time Stories as well? I think so.
Look that up. So this, like I said, it's an escape room in a box. This was awesome. Awesome. Okay. No spoilers, obviously. Go check this out. It's like a $15 MSRP. It's completely disposable, though. It plays up to 6 players. We played it at 6. I think 5-4 is probably the right number. You're shaking your head right now. It's not the same designer. Okay.
No, apologies to Peggy Chassanet and Emmanuel Rozoy, who did Time Stories. I figured with the disposable, the mix. Anyway, yep.
Okay.
Mixed it up. Sorry, okay. Inca Brand.
So.
And Marcus Brand.
Yes. So. Now, the premise of this particular escape room, and it's or escape in a room in a box, and this isn't a spoiler. You break down in your car and you find yourself in this cabin seeking shelter. You wake up in the morning and you're locked in. You have to unlock the padlock on the door. So it comes with this decoder wheel, which has a bunch of symbols around it, a bunch of different numbers, and you have to turn it, and it's going to give you some code. And then you're going to get some clues, and there's a deck of clue cards, and there's different puzzles you have to work out. There's a little booklet it comes with. And eventually, when you think you'll solve one of the clues, you're all trying to solve these 3-digit numbers, right? And you match it up with the symbol on the little decoder ring, and then it says, okay, you got this right. Go to this card number. And so you go to this card number, and if you're wrong, it'll say, you're wrong. If you're right, then you have to match a certain picture based on certain items in a room to make sure that you found the right clue for the right thing or something like that. And so then it sends you to another card. And if you're wrong, again, you're wrong. But if you're correct, it says, congrats. Now go find these 2 clue cards from the deck. So now you have new clues. You're basically unlocking these little things in the room. Alex.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes, Sean.
This was awesome.
Cool.
This was really awesome. So you get brownie points or stars depending on how quickly you get through this and depending on how many hints that you use. We used 2 or 3 hints, and we did it in like 50 or 49 minutes or something. So we got 8 stars or something, whatever. But it was a fantastic experience. It was not the same as going to an escape room, but it felt pretty similar. I mean, all those different clues you're working out. Again, with 6 players, it was probably too many. There were too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, and everyone's looking at the clues. But I would do this again. This is well worth the $15 for about an hour. By the time you get it out and teach everyone the rules, about an hour's worth of play. You figure if you've got 4 players, that's $375 a person.
Could you play this with another group once it's done, or even then, no?
So I suppose no. I don't want to say why.
Okay.
Because there's potentially spoilers there. The rules tell you that you're allowed to be destructive of the components.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that. I will absolutely leave it at that. But to me, that's $375 for an hour. I mean, that's fine. And it's a cool experience. It's a different experience.
Cool.
So,
yeah, I'm excited to try it at some point.
And there's 2 more. There's like an Egyptian one and like a mad scientist one. And I think there's like another 3 coming down from Cosmos. There's other companies that are doing these. This was a great implementation. I'm really excited to try more of these. And yeah, so that is Exit the Abandoned Cabin.
All right, final game I'm going to talk about is one I just played today with our good buddy Cameron. Cameron had taught me Coldwater Crown earlier this week. Played with Cameron a lot in Around the World in 80 Days, which we're reviewing later on this podcast. And was hanging out with him. We got in a couple of plays of some 2-player stuff. One of them was Glass Road at 2 players, an Uwe favorite of mine. And I think I like it better at 3 or 4 players. Worth checking out, especially if you like Broom Service. If you enjoyed what Broom Service brought to the table, you might like what Glass Road does to kind of step it up a little notch. And the resource management in that is really interesting. We also got in a Cosmos game called Tally Ho! Tally Ho is a game that's similar in some ways to Raptor, in only that you have a team of hunters and humans, and then you have a team of animals. So you have one team has a couple lumberjacks and 8 hunters. Another team has a couple of bears and foxes. There are also pheasants, and there are trees, and there are ducks that will get flipped up. So what you'll do is, it's a 49 square board. You have 48 tiles. You shuffle them all up, put them randomly around the board with 1 tile empty in the middle, and you flip them up and go from there. So on your turn, you're either going to flip up a tile or move a tile that you can control. So if you're the blue player controlling the animals, you control the animals. If you're the human player, you control the humans doing stuff. Trying to collect points. So if you're the animals, you get points. The foxes can eat pheasants and ducks. The bears can eat humans, can eat lumberjacks, and can eat hunters. Hunters can shoot ducks and pheasants and bears and foxes. And lumberjacks can chop down trees. All of that will earn you points of various kinds. And what you're trying to do is trying to be the player who gets the most points as a result of that. You're supposed to play 2 rounds. You're supposed to play one where one player is the human and then one where the other player is the human. So you're supposed to kind of get a good balancing act. This is random, silly fun. Random, silly fun because the arrangement of the tiles absolutely can completely screw up one player or the other. And consistently, it screwed over one player or the other. There were very few rounds of this. I think out of 6 rounds we played of this, or 4 rounds of this, one of them was close. The other 3 were hilarious blowouts. Hilarious in that you'd have situations where like the foxes would form a pen around the hunters. So the hunters are pointed in one direction randomly. You don't know which way they're going to be pointed, and you can't turn them in any way. So if they're pointed one direction stuck in a corner, they can easily be trapped there. They can't move through foxes. So you can kind of line up the foxes and then bring a bear in there and the bear will start eating the hunters. That happened one round. Yet another round where the bear woke up right next to a lumberjack and just ate up the lumberjack. Yet another round where the hunters just shot up everything. It's random, silly fun. I got a kick out of it. I don't know how much I enjoy it as a game per se, but it's really, really funny and really fun.
So with all of the fox talk,
yeah.
Does this answer the age-old question of what does the fox say?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it doesn't speak in the game. Yeah, I know the reference, Sean. Right. Again, I know the reference.
Okay.
I'm not playing your game, Sean.
Yeah, I know you don't play my games, Alex. Hey, you want to play 1846?
No, absolutely not.
You want to play Star Wars Destiny?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Okay.
Like I said. Anyway.
All right.
Can you tell I'm really trying to sell Star Wars Destiny?
Yeah, good job. That's what we played this week. Let's head on over to the news. All right, first up in the news, the nominees for the Dice Tower Awards have been announced. For Game of the Year, here are the lists, and it's a good long list here, Sean. Adrenaline, Captain Sonar, Cry Havoc, A Feast for Odin, Great Western Trail, Inish, Mechs vs. Minions, Scythe, Star Wars Rebellion, and Terraforming Mars.
So, of all of these, I have only not played one.
That's very good.
And that's Star Wars Rebellion.
Which is shocking.
I have it upstairs. I have a beautiful Meeple Realty insert. It's driving me crazy I haven't played this game.
I have to play it as well.
Yeah.
It's nominated in 5 different categories, so that'll cover a lot of bases. Scythe is nominated in 6 categories, which I think is not surprising at all. That one, I don't know, would you call it the favorite for Game of the Year here?
It's tough.
Terraforming Mars is in the mix for sure.
I think it's going to be Scythe or Terraforming Mars. I'm not sure. Now, there's a whole host of other awards, different categories, best 2-player game, best card game, best art, best theme, etc. We're not going to go over all those now. In the past, we've done actually usually 2 episodes on these.
Yeah.
One kind of talking through the nominations, and then the second one, because we are on the committee that helps nominate these games and helps vote on these games.
We have votes.
We do. And so this is the time period of the year where we furiously try and get the missing games in before the vote, because the vote happens in
a few weeks
June,
from now.
I think.
Sometime in June. Yeah, it's before Dice Tower Con, which is early July.
Yeah, so we've got a month. And so as far as Game of the Year, like I said, there's only one I haven't played. So now definitely got to play Star Wars Rebellion. If you were just looking at this list now, Alex, for the Game of the Year. Oh, by the way, let me just say, we'll probably do a discussion topic after we've made our votes.
Right.
Because we're completely free to talk about how we voted.
Correct. Just not discussions other people have had.
Right. Exactly. So just looking at this right now, I mean, I'm assuming your Game of the Year is going to be Scythe, right?
Well, that was my favorite game of last year. It makes total sense. I don't know if it'll win. I think it has a very, very good shot.
Sure. And I'm probably going to vote for Scythe. Again, Star Wars Rebellion. I mean, everything I've heard about it, it is an IP that I absolutely adore. Absolutely adore. It's got fantastic components, great Fantasy Flight treatment. And the things I hear about this gameplay, I don't know. But right now, if I were voting today, it would absolutely be Scythe. But I'm going to work hard to try and get some of the missing games in for the other categories too.
How about a proposal here?
Okay.
Next Thursday, after we record the podcast.
Dude, it's like 2 to 4 hours for our first game.
That's fine.
I have to work. You don't have a job.
Whoa. That's discriminatory.
Is it true?
Accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
But no, let's plan something.
Everyone has a job in life, Sean.
Let's schedule something, because that does need to happen. It is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. And then we'll play Destiny afterwards.
All right, next up, Dead of Winter, new expansion coming out, Warring Colonies. Sean, what's going on with this one?
We were suspicious when they arrived across town and set up camp. But we tried to live in peace. No more. They've taken too much from us. Too much that we can't get back. It's time for revenge. It's time for war.
All right, then.
So this is kind of crazy, Alex. If you have this expansion, this Warring Colonies, if you have the base game, and if you have the Long Night expansion, keep in mind the Long Night is a standalone expansion. If you have all 3 of these, you can play a game with 11 people. 11, Alex.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And Dead of Winter is not a short game, mind you. You basically have 2 warring colonies. If you have that 11th person, they're now a lone wolf. They play, I guess, by themselves. This sounds crazy. And I don't mean necessarily crazy good. I mean, this sounds crazy. Like, I enjoy Dead of Winter just fine. I don't know that I enjoy Dead of Winter this much to play how long is this going to be?
How long's the setup of this going to be?
Well, and who has a table big enough for this kind of setup, right? I mean, this is like Twilight Imperium size setup, which on my 4x6 gaming table, there's no room. There's not enough room for everything. So I don't know. So most of the new content in this is it can support that variant, because there's some other variants I guess you can play. You don't need all 3 sets, but if you want to do the 2 colonies, you need all 3 sets. But you could still combine this with just this and then one of the other 2, the base game or the Long Night. Yeah, I'm kind of confused. I guess there's a demand for this, but it just seems really long. And yeah, I don't know. And I'm kind of curious what's happening with the other Crossroads games, because that was kind of the big thing, this whole Crossroads system, which is a really cool mechanic. I mean, I feel like I'm poo-pooing Dead of Winter, and I don't mean to. This seems like a lot. But anyway, the whole point was that they were going to come out with these other Crossroads games, not Dead of Winter, but Crossroads games in space or whatever. And it just seems like they're really investing in Dead of Winter, which, as big a success as it's been, I can't necessarily fault them for that. Do you know they have a Dead of Winter comic coming out?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So no official release date for this yet. It's coming soon, according to Plaid Hat's release, which you can find on their website. But reportedly, it's still in playtesting. So I don't think we're expecting anything this year. I mean, probably 2018 at the earliest. But I don't know. Does this appeal to you at all?
Maybe.
11 players?
That's a lot.
Okay.
Oh, that's a lot.
It's got to be at least 3 hours.
Yeah. Oh, if not longer.
I mean, there's like, if they did something where they're like, okay, we're going to streamline play in the colonies. Okay. That sounds cool. But I don't know that that's going to be the case.
We'll see. Yeah, it's a TBA with this one for me.
Yeah.
TBD. Not a TBA. I'm not announcing anything. I'm determining something. So
yeah, you are.
Yeah, that makes more sense. All right, finally, our Kickstarter. And this week we're talking about Moa. No, it's not Moana, the board game version of the Disney movie. I was about to say Disney classic, but it came out last year, I think.
Well, you know what, though? If we were judging Disney movie classics by the same way we judge board game classics, a game that came out last year could be
considered. Well, we'll get to that. That's our discussion topic later in the show. So you're way early on that. Get things in the right order, Sean. Come on.
My bad.
I tried, by the way, last year when it did come out, I tried to get a group of board game friends to go have a Broana. Just a bunch of bros going to see Moana. Didn't happen. I just had to see it by myself. I think I saw it by myself. Who did I see that with? Anyway, this is completely off track and has nothing to do with the game we're talking about. Moa.
Come on, Time Cop Alex.
Yeah,
get
I know.
Together. Tighten this up.
Behind, actually. Martin Wallace. It's a Martin Wallace design published by Ape Games, who you might know from Spirits of the Rice Paddy, which we reviewed a good ways back. Yeah. I don't remember when that was. It isn't a re-implementation of or a redesign of, but it resembles Liberté, a prior Martin Wallace design, which I haven't played. I haven't played
either. No.
It's, as best I can tell from looking at things, reading through the rules quickly, it's a territory control game. Here's the description. Moa is a fantasy interpretation of the clash between the original inhabitants of New Zealand and the wave of settlers from over the seas. The inhabitants are birds, reimagined with human traits. Thus, they talk, wear clothes, and use tools. The invaders are a motley bunch made up of dogs, possums, rats, and weasels. Each mammalian invader has its own characteristic. The dogs are more peaceable, but powerful if pushed to fight, while the weasel is rapacious, attacking whenever possible. You control tribes of birds and seek to control as much of the board as you possibly can.
So it looks pretty interesting. Basically, there are these different territory types on the island of New Zealand, or the different sections of New Zealand. And every turn, 2 different territory types are eligible for play. And so it's a hand management game where you are playing, and it looks like, I think they're multi-use cards, sort of. And you're playing them out to play different actions, either adding population to the certain territories, adding leaders. You can even like sell territories to the mammals or fight the mammals. It looks cool. And it has a really like whimsical, that's the second time I've used whimsical art style. The birds are really cool looking. The mammals are, this looks pretty solid.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. I love the art style with this, and the gameplay of it actually does look pretty interesting. Plays about 45 to 60 minutes, 3 to 5 players, and this will run you $40 for most backers. If you'd backed Petrichor or Dino Rush, other Ape games, it'll be $37 if you had already backed those.
So real quick, let's just talk about the price point. $40, that's a price point I'm comfortable with.
For sure.
I think that's going to include, or not include, but it's going to be shipping on top of that. Now, here's the weird thing, right? So if you've backed one of these previous games, you get a $3 discount. That's interesting. I mean, on one hand, you're rewarding repeat supporters, and that's kind of nice. As a newcomer, I don't know if that's off-putting to some people. I backed Spirits of the Rice Paddy, but I guess that's not, it's kind of what have you done for me lately type thing.
Could be.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that reward for recent backers?
I don't mind it too much, in all honesty. Here's the thing. I don't back a ton of stuff on Kickstarter, mainly because when I back stuff on Kickstarter, it tends to go sideways on me very often. I don't mind some degree of loyalty here. There have always been some times where I've regretted not backing something on Kickstarter. It's kind of tough because it's rewarding people who are early adopters of your games as opposed to people who are just adopters of your games, period.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the distinction there. I'm okay with that being, I'm okay with it, if that makes sense. Okay. It doesn't bug me too much, even as an infrequent Kickstarter backer.
Yeah, I'm not super against it, let's say. I mean, it's $3. I mean, if it were like 10, I'd be like, oh, that's, yeah. I don't know. It's something curious. I've seen someone else do it before. I can't recall who. But yeah, oh no, you know what? Who did that was Overworld Games, I believe, for some of their Good Cop, Bad Cops. I seem to recall that. Anyway, so this ends May 31st, and it hasn't funded yet. It's got an $18,000 goal. It's only at $13,000
as of this recording, which is the Thursday before this episode releases. So who knows? It might be much closer by the time we get there.
Yeah.
So that is Moa from Martin Wallace. Sean, are you going to back this?
I think it's a strong possibility.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I like that price point.
Got it. Fair enough. So that's Moa, and that is a look at the news.
In these turbulent times, you can't just let yourself become adrift in the flow of history. Instead, you need to
Wait. Hang on.
Yeah.
Aside from your presidential speech here, Sean, and this isn't Independence Day, so ease up. That sounded like an interesting name for a game there, Flow of History. Is that being done yet?
Yeah, but there's no aliens involved like Independence Day.
Oh, okay.
So Flow of History is yet another innovative game designed from Taiwanese designer Jesse Lee, who also designed Ponzi Scheme. This is a civilization game where players are developing their nation using a unique bidding and price-setting mechanism to purchase new cards. But what is paid to the supply might also be harvested into the pockets of other players later, which puts a bit of a twist on your strategy for bidding and also cleverly simulates an economic inflation for the game.
Flow of History is up on Indiegogo right now.
Tasty Minstrel Games recently moved their Flow of History campaign from Indiegogo to Kickstarter.
It's being done by Tasty Minstrel Games. You can check out that game and all of TMG's awesome titles at playtmg.com. Can you leave on a trip around the world and come back with just enough money to survive, but not too much money? If you want to play Alex the board game, that's coming out soon. If not, check out Around the World in 80 Days.
October 2nd, 1872. Phileas Fogg is asserting that it's possible to go around the world in 80 days. The gentlemen of the Reform Club have made a bet on his failure, since they don't believe this eccentric dandy could ever succeed. However, the most troubling part of this story is the strange coincidence between the rash departure of Phileas Fogg, accompanied by his loyal valet, Passepartout, and the theft of £50,000 from the Bank of England.
Around the World in 80 Days is designed by David Parlett. It was originally published in 1973 under the name Hare and Tortoise. The 1973 version was also the very first Spiel des Jahres winner in 1979. Its current incarnation is published by Iello Games. This is a race game that has players competing to be the first to circumnavigate the globe and return to London.
The first lady or gentleman to return to London wins the game. However, since you left the British capital suspected of stealing from Her Majesty's Bank, you will have to return to London without any rumor cards and £10 or less in your pocket in order to prove your innocence in the eyes of the world. Players will quickly discover that moving too fast drains their wallet just as fast. To win, you will have to alternate between cautious and ambitious advances, waiting for the right moment to return to the city.
The board is made up of 80 spaces. Players will place their top hat piece at the start of the London spot. In turn, players will move any number of spaces they wish as long as they can afford it. The game uses a pyramidal cost structure, so one space costs £1, two spaces cost £3, three spaces cost £6, four spaces cost £10, and so on and so forth. In addition to being able to afford the intended spot, it also can't be occupied by another player.
Now, there are several different types of spaces on the board that you will land on throughout the game. The Passepartout spots, named for the French valet of Phileas Fogg, will allow you to draw event and character cards that have some game effect. Some good, some bad.
Then there are bet spaces. You'll gain some money at the start of your next turn if your relative position on the track is equal to the bet space. So first, second, third, and then collectively all together, fourth, fifth, or sixth. You'll earn £10 times your relative position on the board.
When you land on a pound space, you will not do anything immediately. However, at the start of your next turn, you can choose to not move and instead either gain or lose £10.
Police spaces will let you get rid of one of the 3 rumor cards you start the game with. You'll get £10 for your relative position on the track after losing a turn to get rid of one of those rumor cards.
Finally, there are the layover spots, which can only be moved to in a backwards fashion. For every space that you move backwards to land on that layover spot, you will gain £10.
The game ends as soon as a player reaches the 80th spot on the board. That's London, with no rumor cards and £10 or less. They will be the winner, and that's how you play Around the World in 80 days.
All right, so initial thoughts, Alex. We need an acronym for this. ATWED.
This is not going to be P-Rock. It's not going to be catchy enough.
ATWED? Atwed?
Atwed?
What do you think of Atwed?
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm on board.
Okay.
Yeah. So Atwed, for me, I think is successful at doing what it sets out to do. And what I mean by that is I don't think this is going to be a game for your hardcore gamers necessarily, for folks who tend to like really heavy games or really mathy games or really anything significantly heavy. It's easy to learn. The mechanics are fairly clean and simple. There's a good amount of chance in here. And at the end of the day, it plays fairly well at a wide range of player counts. I didn't say every player count, at a wide range of player counts. By wide, I mean 3 to 5 players. I think generally speaking, what it sets out to do, it succeeds at. There are a couple things that I think hold it back a bit, but not significantly. So yeah, we'll talk through those.
Okay.
Sean, your first thoughts.
Yeah, so I initially played this game at 6 players, and boy, did I hate this game. I hated this game, Alex. It was an hour and a half, and this is not an hour and a half game.
It shouldn't be.
It really shouldn't be. This is a 45-minute, maybe an hour game at a higher player count. And it wasn't necessarily AP with players. It's a lot of players to go through. There's a lot more blocking in 6 players and some tougher choices. Okay. All right. Forget 6 players. I'm never going to play 6 players again. 3 players is super snappy. We played 3 players in about 25 minutes. I thought that was fantastic. To me, there were plenty of tough choices. It played super snappy. I mean, so snappy that we were kind of jumping ahead.
Almost too fast, right? But that's fine. It's fine because I was excited to take my turn. And this game, I mean, you talk about it not being super mathy, and I think that's true for most of the game because you have this chart that tells you, oh, I want to move 12 spaces. That's going to cost me 76 or whatever it is, however that math works out. But at the end of the game, that requirement that you have to have 10 pounds or less is huge. Because what that does is that prevents you from just trying to kind of move along, but trying to gain as much money as possible. And you're like, here's $428 for me to be able to move 60 spaces or whatever. Haha, I win. Well, no, because you have to pay the exact amount to land on London and still have that $10 or less. I have had enough money, but I was over by 70. And the best way to get rid of that, or the easiest way to get rid of that, is to go to one of those pound spots and you lose $10 or 10 pounds a turn. Well, if I'm $70 over, that's 7 turns. You have problems.
I've lost. At that point, I've lost. Some of the what's it called? Passaporto. Some of those spots, you can lose money. In fact, I have twice now kind of done a Hail Mary. Well, I'm going to go there. Hopefully I get a really bad card that's going to make me lose some money. And so there's a little bit of luck of the draw there. I spent one game where I kind of avoided those spots altogether. I just wanted to kind of play the game with as little randomness as possible. But overall, I'm glad that this was something that we were forced to review. Well, not forced to review, but I had to get more plays in because of the review.
Right.
Had I just played this one day at 6 players, I'd be done. I would never play this game again.
So I never played it at 6.
Yeah.
I can imagine it being just too many. Even 5 is pushing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play 5
I think the sweet spot is 4, and it worked really well at 3. But we'll talk more about that as we go. Rulebook, Sean.
Yeah, I think this is a solid rulebook. It's very short. The rule set here is really simple. I mean, it's low complexity rules with some decent depth of decisions. You can, I mean, if you just want to spend all 76 of your $80 or whatever it is to jump ahead however many spaces, then you got to spend some turns working for money. There's lots of options, especially at the middle play counts, the 3-4 play counts. At 6, you're kind of limited. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. The rulebook, I think, is really solid. All of there's player aids, which give you detailed explanations of what the different spaces do. Again, the simplicity of the rule set's nice. Yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's a solid rulebook.
I think this is the best spot to bring this up because I think it fits more as a rules issue than a components issue. There's 2, I think there's 2 of each card in the deck.
Okay.
Or something close to that. It may not be exact. Don't quote me on this. There is a card that I know for sure is in the deck, and I think it's in there twice, where the wording is out and out just incredibly confusing. If you have at least 10 pounds, gain 10 pounds, it wasn't worded properly.
Yeah.
There's one that you run into. I think you can probably intuit to some degree what you're supposed to do as a result of that, but there's some tricky wording on a couple of the cards. It's not a consistent issue with the game, but it is in a couple of places.
I was having flashbacks on some of them to LSAT questions.
Interesting.
The law school entrance test.
Because those cards are written, and we're getting into components art right now anyway. Those cards are written as letters. They're letters from Passepartout. Dear Mr. Fogg, you lose half your money. Love, Passepartout. Dear Mr. Fogg, reset your money to where you're at 80 pounds. Love, Passepartout. Those are some of the swingy effects that come in, and we'll talk more about those, I guess, in gameplay because they're a huge part of this game.
Are they huge, Alex?
Huge.
Okay.
Rest of components art, to me, I like the look of this game a decent amount. I thought it was fairly clear, and the art style worked really well as far as I can tell. Top Hat, I think, worked perfectly because you need to flip it over as a way to remind you that you're losing your turn next time when you're on the police spaces. I thought that was perfectly well done. Colors were different enough that it all made sense to me. Card quality was fine. I didn't have any components issues, and I think it looks pretty nice on the table, actually, Sean. Oh, except for money.
Yeah. So the money is in, I think, decent denominations. I think they made some choices here based on how often certain values are coming up based on how far you're moving. I think it was 1, 3, 5, 10, 15, 30.
Correct.
So they all, and money's hidden, by the way. So they all have the same back. They're all these rectangular cards, but the money is just in the top 2 corners, the printed amount, instead of on all 4 corners or instead of nice and big on like the center pound symbol. It was kind of a weird choice, and it added just a little bit of delay when you're putting money back in the appropriate piles.
And in fact, it would happen that money would end up in the wrong piles every now and then.
Right. Or even just quickly scanning my hand to like, wait, is this, this one's upside down and I can't see them. It's a weird choice. It's a weird design choice.
Yeah. I didn't find it was a huge issue, but I definitely found that in some cases things would get missorted for sure. And in some cases you'd have to look more closely at your hand to figure out just how much money you did have. It's not a quick glance kind of thing.
And maybe they do that so it's harder to accidentally glance someone's hand. But hey, just don't look at people's hands. Rory, I'm talking to you, Rory, who's just like outright looking at my hand. And then when we play Parade, he's looking at Matthew's hand. He's just unabashedly looking at people's hands, Rory. Come on, man.
All right.
Sorry. I'm just angry.
Fair enough. So yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think either different colors on the money have made it work better?
No, I think just a large symbol, a large number in the center of the pound. That's it. It's I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird that they're only on the top 2 corners.
Better than paper money though?
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So,
well, let me just say too,
yeah.
I think the art style is really cool. It just has that Victorian era look. It's a nice, like, deep, bright red box. Is that a contradiction?
It looks really cool.
Deep and bright. Are those contradictions?
I don't think so.
In art theory? I don't know.
No, maybe.
Theory?
I don't know art theory.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, I think it looks beautiful, especially if you like that Victorian style art. So yeah, I think solid, other than the coins or the money, the pounds, I think it's a solid production.
Very good. Let's get into gameplay and innovation. Sean, so at 6, obviously you were frustrated. How did you find this one played in general to you?
So at WED, it's a bunch of interesting decisions, right? But it's, I think, a very different game, a high play count versus a low play count. So at a high play count, you're a lot more limited. And I think that adds to the length of play. There are times at the high play count when you're like, well, I don't really have any good move. I'm just going to have to go with a cheap move to essentially be a delay to see what opens up. And that's not great. That's not a great way to play the game. It was much better at a low play count where there were more things opened up, where there's still difficult decisions to make, where you're still getting cut off from time to time. There's a tempo to the game too, which is really nice, especially when you consider that you're not just moving forward, but you're also moving back. Because that's a great source of income sometimes.
It's MC Scat Cat, the board game.
Yes.
2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Okay. And
Sean, we go together.
Like opposites attract?
That's right.
Because I'm
looking deep into your eyes saying
just
that.
A natural fact. We go together.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. I was just going to stop there.
I've seen Paula Abdul in concert with...
Whoa.
Yeah.
With MC Scat Cat?
With MC Scat Cat.
He was there?
Yes.
Wow.
There was this guy in this big suit.
Jeez.
I'm not joking.
Okay. The only concert I think I've ever seen was Weird Al Yankovic.
You've only been to one concert?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't go to many concerts.
You want to know what my first concert?
I don't get out much.
My first concert was? You want to know?
What was that?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh.
It was really cool.
Okay. Yeah, my first was Weird Al Yankovic in Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Okay. Your first and last.
Yeah, I think maybe I went to something else, but I can't think of what that would have been.
Well, let's get back to AtWed.
Back to you, Sean.
Yes, back to us and our AtWed coverage. So yeah, I like that tempo to the game, especially the lower play counts, because you have to plan, all right, what do I think my opponent's going to do? Not only for, say, the bet spaces, because like, let's say in a 3-player game, I land on a 3-bet spot, which is saying that when my turn starts, if I'm in 3rd place, I'm going to get 10 pounds for that position. So 30 pounds total. Whereas if I'm on a 1-bet space, I'm going to get 10 pounds if I'm correct.
And there's considerations on your move. Do I want to sabotage that? Do I want to make sure someone doesn't get paid on that bet? If they're on a police space, do I want to make sure I move behind them maybe so that they get paid fewer pounds as a result of that? So there's an element of trying to deny players money. as a result of this game, which is interesting and works fairly well.
It sure does. And what's nice, too, is that the money's hidden. Because if you knew that money situation, I think that would add so much AP to this game. So the fact that it's hidden, I think, is solid.
What's also interesting with this game is that balancing act, right? You have to have that balancing act of, I need to spread out getting rid of these police news cards or get rid of them at some point over the course of this game. I need to take enough actions to do that, which will cost you turns as you go, but, get you money. It's not the worst thing that happens to you. There's this balancing act of wanting to go behind a little bit so you can get more money, but not too far behind, because if you end up too far behind, it really gets expensive to move a great distance across this board.
Right.
Curtis, we were playing with, had built up, basically his entire strategy was just building up money over the course of this 4-player game. Tons of money. Just, you landed on every 4, 5, 6 bet space and got paid. He was so far behind and just stacking up money. And he was still 2 or 3 turns away from being able to rocket forward and do anything. It could work in the right strategy if it was the right calculation. And I like that there's a possibility that kind of lagging behind far enough strategy could work. It feels to me like there are mixes of strategies that could play into this.
Sure. I did that lagging behind strategy where I was, this was in the 6-player game, where I was constantly trying to be 6th place to get $60 a pop. Problem is I did the math wrong and I overshot by $80.
Right.
Yeah.
Too much money.
Too much money.
Yeah. So there's that balancing act also between too much money, too little money. Balancing act. And this is an interesting decision to me. Rocketing into first, you want to be in first. It's a race. You want to win the race. But if you're first and you land on a passport 2 space, that's a risky proposition because some of those are quite good. Some of those are pretty brutally bad.
Well, let's explain the rule there because we didn't quite get into that.
Sure. Yeah, not exactly.
If you land in one of the passport 2 spaces and you're in first place, you draw 1 card and you apply the effect. If you're in anything but first, you draw 2 and you pick.
Right.
Which adds a little bit of safety there if you're, because some of them can be bad depending on the situation. Sometimes you want to lose money, but it just depends. And I think what that does too is it adds a little bit of a catch-up mechanic. You have that, plus obviously you're getting a lot more money when you're in farther back positions for those bet spaces.
Well, the whole game, if you think about it in many ways, is a catch-up mechanic.
Yeah.
Because you're getting more money every time and significantly more money if you're lagging behind the entire race, especially compared to someone who's in first the entire race or most of the race up towards the front of the pack. So the entire game is sort of self-balancing in this weird way.
Right. And I think it's almost inappropriate for us to call it a catch-up mechanic in the way that you would think. I mean, I think because basically it's just, like you mentioned, it is so balanced that way that it's not really a kind of a catch-up mechanic that feels forced or artificial. It's just that natural balance of the gameplay and the math, too.
Yeah. This was based, as we mentioned, off of the very first Spiel des Jahres winner. So it's an older design that's been beefed up a little bit. I don't think either of us have played Heron Tortoise.
I have not, no.
So we can't speak from experiences to the differences.
And just to reference, this is the original 73 Heron Tortoise. There was a different game. I think is it Iello 2 that did Heron Tortoise, one of the storybook series.
Okay.
If I'm thinking of the right one. But anyway, this is the older version.
And I'm not privy to the differences so much, so I don't know how to compare the two. Did this design feel old to you, Sean? Or did it feel a little older in playing it?
If you had asked me when this game was designed, I probably would have said, oh yeah, this feels like the classic Euro era of the late 90s, early 2000s. But to say it was 73, I was like, oh wow. I mean, it seems ahead of its time. But yeah, I mean, you tend to like lower complexity games that still have a decent amount of depth. For whatever reason, I tend to prefer more complex games that also have depth, but for a different reason. And yeah, it definitely feels like a classic.
So the other piece of this that comes in quite frequently, as we mentioned, because you have to calculate how far you're going to move, where you want to move, target spaces you want to try to get to. Math plays a pretty decent role in this game, Sean.
More than you would expect, I think, in terms of the end game.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the end game.
Yeah, because it's not just enough to have a lot of money. You have to have just enough to spend so that you're 10 or under.
All right. So player count wise, recommend this probably at 3, 4, and I would say even at 5, it's okay. Better if people know what they're doing.
Yeah, 5 if you can play snappy.
6, I would not play at ever. It sounds like a nightmare.
I would probably try to avoid 5. I will never play this at 6. Just not going to happen. If a 6-person sat down and be like, oh, I'm good. But you guys play 5-player, no problem. No worries.
There's a 2-player variant for this, and our understanding of this is you control 2 pieces.
You control 2 pieces, and basically you need to get both to London. You only care about the second top hat for purposes of getting rid of all your rumor cards and your money. So the first one can get to London whenever. And the second one, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't try that out. Do you think it would work well as a 2-player game?
It might. I mean, you have a little bit more control over that's the spacing of the pieces and or where you're going to land and so on. I don't know that I'm interested in trying it as a 2-player game. And I mean, we had the opportunity to do it and we just kind of said, nah, not going to do it.
One of the comments I got during one of the plays of this, I don't think it was Curtis who said this. Someone said this, and I don't remember who. It's a good kids game.
Okay.
Do you think that's the case?
So I wouldn't necessarily go that far, though certainly kids could play this game. Younger kids could play this game. I do think that the end game math is really difficult.
It can be,
yeah,
for sure.
Well, I mean, certainly. I definitely think that is problematic for it being considered a kid's game. Especially, I mean, it depends on what age you're talking about here. I mean, if you're talking like 10, 11, 12, maybe, even then, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I quite agree. But I could certainly see why some might think that. And I think it has to do with its rules complexity.
The other one I wanted to ask you, too, was dealing with Passport 2 cards.
Yeah.
And those are quite swingy. In your eyes, are they too swingy, or are the decisions there interesting enough as they pop up?
Yeah, it's tough to say because, like I said, I spent one game trying to completely avoid them as much as possible, just to kind of get a feel for the game that way. And yeah, they're pretty random and pretty swingy. But I think that makes it less about the math, which adds in a little bit of variety. A little bit of variety of the game.
What was interesting for me in my first play of this at 5. And you mentioned the blocking. Blocking comes up in a huge way in a 5-player game, just as it would in a 6-player game. I couldn't get onto any of the police news spaces to drop my rumor as much as I wanted to. I was so frustrated. And Cameron, who was sitting next to me, was able to drop 2 of them by drawing Passport 2 cards. There's a Passport 2 card that basically turns the space you're on into a police news space.
Right.
Which can be super useful in a lot of situations. In one situation in our 3, I think you ran into this in our 3-player game, Sean. It cost you a turn.
It did, because it says if you don't have any rumor cards, just lose a turn.
Hence the swinginess of this.
Yeah.
It could be really beneficial, or it could completely mess you up.
Right.
In the right situation, losing $10 to every player behind you in order may be the exact thing you need in that right situation. But most of the times, that's pretty nasty.
So some of the cards aren't strictly bad. They're situationally bad. And I kind of appreciate that. Because like I said, there were times when I would land on those spots hoping for a quote unquote bad effect.
Right.
Because I need to lose money.
And I think it's interesting that the cards, even the bad ones, can be beneficial in the right situation. So I think that piece of it's cool. But for a lot of the race, they can be quite swingy. And if you don't like swingy gameplay, if you don't like having that in the mix of things, yeah, I mean, watch out. And some of these cards, too, what's interesting, they will be less beneficial depending on the player count you're at. Absolutely. There's one, for instance, that lets you move backwards onto a city space. You're only allowed to move backwards into these layover spots, as they're called. And it lets you move into an occupied city space. You can't typically occupy spaces at the same time as another player. That in a 3-player game is not useless, but likely to be mostly useless.
The spot's less likely to be occupied than it would be in a 6-player game.
And in a 3-player game, there are whole spots on the board that are dead, the 4, 5, and 6 spots that are dead. Even so, I like the snappiness of it.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. Quick talk about theme. Does this feel thematic to you, Sean?
In some ways, certainly. I mean, I think there's almost a bit of a narrative element here. The different layover spots are different places around the world. There's Yokohama, there's San Francisco, and it's, laid out in such a way that you're traversing the path or the sequence that you would to go around the globe. And the Passport 2 cards add a little bit of flavor to it. But yeah, I mean, it's what it is. I don't think it's necessarily super thematic.
Yeah. All right. We're getting to final thoughts rating. Sean, you want to get first?
Absolutely. If I had played this only at 6 players...
It would be a 1?
It wouldn't be a 1. It would be... I don't know. Would it be a 2? Interesting little peek behind the curtain.
So here's our rating, by the way. 1 through 6 scale.
Right.
1 is the worst possible rating. 6 is the best possible rating.
Yeah. I
don't think it's going to be even a 5 or a 6 for each of us.
No. But real quick, I was just going to say a little peek behind the curtain into the Dutchy Productions over here. So our buddy Jeremy, who was on several episodes during your hiatus, Alex, he had mentioned how he wants to unleash the 2. Hashtag unleash the 2. He felt when he was assigning a number for Nippon, a rating for Nippon, he wanted to give it a 2, but didn't feel like he could based on the way the wording is. A 2 is game has some merit, but has significant issues.
And he heard me being a little hesitant with Railroad Revolution to quite dip to a 2.
Right.
I was close, but I didn't quite go there last week.
I think we've kind of established that if you just don't want to play this game ever, it's probably a 2. So, but anyway, this is not a 2. It's not a 2. Had I played only at 6, and I mean, I probably wouldn't rate a game at having just played it once, but I'm going to go and give this a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. For my style of game, my typical choice of complexity, of weight, this doesn't quite do it for me. I will certainly play this game again, especially a right player count. 3 players, 4 players, sure. 5, I don't know. But I enjoyed this well enough. I am not running out to get this. If I were to get this, it would be for a specific purpose, for gateway, for younger gamers, for non-gamers, etc. It does have a great complexity to depth ratio. I think that's fantastic. But ultimately, I didn't find it super exciting. So yeah, 3, game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation.
So I'm straddling this one, Sean, and we've talked about differences in points. A 3 is a game that you'll play again, but you don't care if it's available to play. In other words, if it shows up on the table and it's the right situation, you might sit down and play it. The 4, it's a good game. I'll play it, maybe even suggest it, and I'd be a little upset if it wasn't something that would be readily available to me. I'm straddling between this one. The price point, looking it up, is pretty right on this one. It's best I can tell you get it from anywhere $25 or $30, depending on the source you buy it from, wherever you're buying it from. It looks beautiful, and it plays well with the right crowd, for sure. I think this isn't one that's going to come out a lot during our typical Wednesday night game nights. But for instance, during my KRQE board game night, something like that, I could see this one coming out as a, hey, let's get things going. It's less than an hour. It's easy enough to learn. A little mathy at times, for sure, but plays snappily enough. And the mechanics are easy to learn, which it fits a role. It serves a purpose. For my personal taste, although I tend to like lighter games, though, I'm kind of in that 3.5 zone, and usually that means it kind of rounds down a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and go with a 3 as well. Game is okay. Not exciting. We'll play in the right situation, but better than what I would typically assign to a 3, if that makes sense, that I'm kind of borderline with it. Well, as we like to call this, without giving a half point, a high 3.
Okay.
Yeah, a high 3. So, yeah, that's where I'm going to settle on this one. If it disappeared from Empire, I think there are other ones that I would play ahead of this one for Gateway or newer gamers. It could certainly come out in the right situation, especially if someone really engaged with the fiction, really likes the theme. It works well enough, and I certainly had enough fun. There were enough laugh out loud kind of moments with it. I enjoyed it. It just doesn't quite bump it up to a 4.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Adwet, or just Around the World in 80 Days. It's a 3 from Sean and a 3 from Alex.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double-Take.
All right, this week at our Dukes Double-Take, we're looking back at episode 91, Rent-A Sandbox. And we're reviewing Signorie. Interestingly enough, a week after we'd reviewed another What's Your Game game. Would have been nice if we'd had these in the same episode, but, planning.
Yeah.
We
reviewed Nippon the week before.
That's okay. So this was designed by Andrea Charvesio and Pierluca Zizi. Apologies for butchering that, probably. So we were split on this one just like we were on Railroad Revolution. And it went similarly, sort of, to Railroad Revolution, more in how I treated it than how you treated it. Sean, you were at a 5 and thought about a 6 with this one, Signorie.
Yeah.
I was down at a 3, and my thoughts were very much parallel to Railroad Revolution, that there's some interesting mechanics to this one, but there's enough that held it back. It just was kind of boring. I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't like it thematically, didn't connect with it. And it felt similar in that way to Railroad Revolution, which I talked about just last week. So, Sean, have you played Signorie since?
I have. I've actually played it twice since.
Oh.
And I love this game. Not 6 love it, but I love it. It's definitely a high 5.
Secret Dutchie code.
So yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, it's, so there's, dice drafting, which I love as a mechanic. And there's an interesting tension of you need high value dice to do high value actions, but you also need low value dice to stay under a certain threshold. It costs more to draft the high value dice. Oh man, this game is so good. I really enjoy this. And I remember, in fact, playing this with Matthew. I think Matthew wanted to give this a 6. And I was talking like, oh, this actually might be a 6 after all. It's not quite there. And I think it's going to stay a 5 for a good long while. I think it's just fantastic. And once again, a 5 is a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. And that is absolutely true. I think it is such a brilliant design. I said brilliant, really weird. I think it's such a brilliant design. And there's so much tension in this game. So much tension. And, oh man, I really need that yellow die. I hope they don't take that yellow die because then I can't afford this other yellow die. Yeah, it's really great. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, what do you think? Is it a 2?
So let's a couple things. First of all,
Unleash the 2.
Part of my criticism of this, not criticism, but just personal taste, really, is that there are other dice drafters that I would play over this one. And again, it was just I didn't feel the theme connected all that well. I wasn't. And theme for me is more important than it is for you in some ways, I think. In some ways. I don't think that's universal, but in a lot of cases, it's not that gameplay isn't important to me, but I do like games that connect on theme and work well on theme. In thinking about this and thinking about if you were to suggest playing Signorie, what would my reaction be? Assuming the ideal situation for that kind of game.
I don't think you would ever want to play this game again.
And by the way, I think less so even than Railroad Revolution.
I would imagine that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think Railroad Revolution, I would play over this if those two were suggested as possibilities.
I can absolutely see that.
And as a result, in thinking about our scaling, and Jeremy, good on Jeremy for pointing this out, yeah, if you don't want to play a game again, even if you would describe it as okay, not exciting, truly that better fits in a 2. It has some merit. I see some of the merits in Signorie, but to me it has significant issues, at least for my enjoyment of it. And quite frankly, it's just not one that I want to play. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's going to drop to a 2.
Woo! Look what you did, Jeremy.
You unleashed the 2, Jeremy.
Hashtag unleash the 2.
Well done. So... Well, yeah. Anyway.
No, terribly done. You have terrible taste in games, Alex. Signorie is amazing. How dare you, sir?
Well, we're not going to game court on this one because I haven't...
but it could have been a game court.
It could have been. With a 3-point gap in scores, you better believe it could have been.
Oh, man.
But I haven't played it since, and I haven't wanted to, and I don't think I'll ever want to.
Yeah. Okay.
And at the end of the day, that's where my tastes are. But as Sean will tell you, there are merits to this game, and I can see the merits to this game, and Sean really enjoys it. So if your tastes tend to align more with his, you'll probably like this one. If your tastes tend to align more with mine, you probably won't. So that's our Duke's Double Take of Signorie. It is still a 5 for Sean, 5.5 maybe, and drops from a 3 to a 2 for me.
5 3/4.
All right, this week, because of our our review of Around the World in 80 Days at WED, we are talking about older games that still hold up in our collection. Oldies, but goodies, Sean.
Some might call them classics.
Some might. And there's Steve O'Rourke had a whole long thing about what makes a classic or not a classic that I'm not worth getting into for my purposes. I mean, no, it's amazing. I'm not ragging on Steve.
Dumps all over Steve O'Rourke.
No, Steve. No.
Vanderbilt Industries. What kind of crappy reference is this?
All right. No, it's more. I think that goes deeper than we necessarily need to go in terms of thinking about what makes a classic. And to me, it's just, has it been around long enough? I guess you could say anything more than 10 years probably fits the bill. For my purposes, I tried to pull games that were mentioned on our guild that were even older than that, that were from a different millennium, Sean.
Okay.
So for your purposes, Sean, in your collection, how many older games do you have and which ones have held up?
Hadn't actually thought about a number. I would say in my collection of approximately 320 games, I think.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've got limited space, Alex.
It's worth counting.
I only have well, actually, funny enough, I am paying Mariah to inventory my board games on Board Game Geek. She's going to do a couple weeks. She's going to go through like a couple sections at a time.
I like how Mariah's more employed than I am right now.
She is, yeah. Anyway, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I'd say probably older than 10 years. Oh, I'd say at least 40 or 50. Yeah, okay. At least. And that's kind of the interesting question of, in one sense, when I think of a classic, I think of those Euros in the late 90s, early 2000s, your El Grande, Settlers of Catan, etc. But there's a lot of older games, too, that still get played. Obviously, Risk, Axis and Allies. And then, are we counting parlor games? Are we counting hearts and spades and cribbage?
Someone did mention cribbage.
Right, exactly. I mean,
and by the way, I love it was a nice family story. It has an all-time series that's very close between, I think, him and his dad. I think that was Jeff Rademacher who mentioned that. And I think they were 7 games apart in like a 300 60, 70 game
Yeah,
series.
no, that's really cool.
Which was really cool. And I, by the way, I still play cribbage with my grandma, and it's something that's near and dear to me. I don't know if I necessarily, it's certainly an older game. Could you count as a classic? I don't know. Check Steve O'Rourke's definition of that, and you might find answers.
Interestingly, I also play cribbage with a loved one still, my iPad. So I do love my iPad.
Oh,
I kind of bought an iPad just for Terra Mystica. Moving on.
And, lawyer money. That's the new acquisition disorder. Is just lawyer money.
It was a refurbished. iPad.
Oh, okay. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Apologies.
So, okay, Todd Kalk makes an interesting observation here. He says that older games are generally less rules heavy and focus more on depth coming from actual decisions and interactions as opposed to complexity of rules. His favorite games have relatively simple rule sets, but very difficult choices and are very interactive. He thinks of Battle Line, Medici are prime examples. They can each be taught in just a couple minutes, but have infinite replayability and always play out differently. So if we're talking about those Euro classics, I would agree. But there are tons of older games out there. There's tons of war games, a bunch of old Avalon Hill games, that are high complexity games. But I certainly see his point of those kind of classics that have withstood the test of time. Now, if you're running in different circles, those older war game circles, that's a whole nother story. I mean, Axis and Allies and Risk kind of have their own, I guess a mass market following still, because they're still pumping out tons of different Axis and Allies games. But if you're talking our hobby style board games, then I understand his point.
Atwed, I think, is a quintessential example of what he's talking about too, in that it's a fairly simple rule set, can teach it really quickly, I think. And yet it'll unfold in different ways, or different things will happen depending on Passport 2 cards. It's not a game that plays itself. It's not a game that it has some amount of chance or randomness that allows it to play out in different ways.
Sure. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So what are some of the older, oldies but goodies that you can think of?
So, and these aren't games that I own, which is typical.
That's just a disclaimer that you'll put on just about anything.
Yeah,
So.
These aren't games that I own for the entire show. So I actually want to go to Matthew Ward because he read my mind a little on this. This is one that immediately came to mind with this topic. And here's what he said. One of the very first that he had was Acquired by Sid Saxon for a game created in 1964. It still has legs. Feels a little outdated in its abstraction of hotel expansion, but the mechanics around it have just the amount of risk management and randomness for me. And I agree with him. This is a game that absolutely still holds up. I love Acquire.
No, Acquire is fantastic. I mean, it is just a really solid game. Absolutely.
Worth mentioning another one that kind of comes up as part of this, Can't Stop. Also a Sid Saxon design. Really holds up and really plays well. An enjoyable one to bring out to the table. And I've brought it out to that at Empire a number of times. Because, Sean, I just can't stop bringing that one out.
What about, because we also kind of talk about modern classics, right? So, it's hard to say, right? It's hard to say, especially because we're so cult to the new, especially board game media, especially us particularly. Even before the podcast, I always liked new experiences anyway. So, you think of a game like Ticket to Ride, which... would that come out? 2003, I think?
2003 or 4? I'll look it up while you're talking.
Yeah. So that's 13, 14 years old. And that's kind of outside the 10 years we were talking about, but I'd still kind of call it that modern classic. I think of a game like Catan, right? Catan, which I've played so many times. It really kind of got me into the board gaming hobby. I'd already been doing Magic and miniatures and things like that. But as far as Catan, we played that so much. But for me, that one is an example of a game that hasn't held up.
So Ticket to Ride 2004.
2004.
Another one that frequently came up that's a little older than that was Carcassonne.
Absolutely.
And Carcassonne, I think, fits the bill of feeling modern enough. BJ from Board Game Gumbo brought this one up, as well as Pit, which I've heard is similar in many ways to Happy Salmon.
Oh, have you not played Pit?
I've never played Pit.
Oh, we need to play Pit. I'm going to order a copy of Pit. I don't own it, but I'm going to order it.
I do a Happy Salmon, by the way, across the table, but again, it's not well set up for that. So, yeah, I agree with you. There almost feels like this different category of games that are sort of from turn of the century, turn of the millennium, if you want to call it, that feel within the span of the hobby board gaming. And funny enough, something I'll bring up in a little bit. Surprise segment to talk about.
Oh.
Yeah, surprise segment that reflects on that. In any case, some others that we got, though, that were a little older. Megan Naxer brought up a whole laundry list of ones, but the oldest one she brought up, and I thought this one was cool, because I played this one within the past few years, was Labyrinth. She says, my husband and I both have fond memories of playing this one as kids, and we keep it on the shelf and play it once a year as a fun puzzle or as a filler with gamers. It still holds up. And she also referenced that a lot of her older games tended to be lighter, while her newer games tend to be heavier, similar to what Todd was saying in reference to some of these older games that tend to survive the test of time, tend to be ones that aren't overly complicated.
I just ordered Pit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
Lawyer money.
It's a fun. Yeah. Actually, it's Deluxe Pit.
Oh, it's Deluxe Pit. Excellent. Are all the cards gold?
They are indeed. For $16, that's the best way to purchase gold.
Oh, that's a really good way to purchase gold if you're going about it that way. Scott Sexton brought up Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and he's in disbelief that this game's almost 40 years old. He says there's a timelessness to the game, and it has highly edited, polished writing. As a solo game, it feels almost more like an interactive novel than a proper board game, but who really cares when you're having this much fun? And that is actually one that I own and haven't played as much as I want to, because it was really interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What is the role in some of these older games in your gaming career?
I think, obviously, you have the games that are older that you have fond childhood memories. For instance, Jeff Rademacher referenced Monopoly, and it's one of those games that anytime it comes up, gamers will poo-poo, because all the time we talk about, oh, I love board games, and someone brings up Monopoly. And there was an article, actually, that we had been talking about on Duke's Chat, where that's not necessarily the right attitude to approach things with. And maybe something we'll talk about more going forward. But he references it as one you can kind of... I have childhood memories of Monopoly, too. And a number of those kinds of games, of the Scrabbles, of Rummikub. Well, Rummikub will still come out from time to time. I think they just have to stand on their own merits. I don't know if it's necessarily a role, so to speak. Obviously, some of these were formative games that you learned to game with, really.
What about going back and trying these modern classics that you haven't played? Because there are probably a handful of games, more than that, because there's some, like, for example, For Sale came out in 97. Fantastic game. But I would say the majority of my collection... The vast majority of my collection is probably 2010 and newer.
Yeah.
And so what is there, maybe duty's not the right word, but should you go back and seek out some of these games that for some people have held up over time versus, oh, this game just came out on Kickstarter, or, hey, look at all these cool new minis and so on.
I think there's value there, for sure. I think there's value in going back and looking more at the roots and looking at where different mechanics may have come from. And it's really cool to see that some of these concepts or some of these things that may seem new in games have actually been around for a lot longer than people think.
I also think it's interesting when people or publishers decide to republish these older games, because they're saying, yeah, there is something here. Or when there's a Kickstarter for bringing back an old game. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I definitely, as someone who's cult of the new, who's constantly following Kickstarter, who's constantly looking at the Gen Con, the SN release schedules, I'll tell you right now, that's not where my focus is, but there are some hidden jewels out there. See, I'm using the right word there. Hidden jewels.
Can I tell you my favorite classic game that is in my collection?
Sure.
It's a 1988 release, Sean.
Okay. And
it's playable for ages, all girls who like guys. That's Heartthrob. Heartthrob, the board game.
I don't think anyone was including Heartthrob in this discussion.
That is a classic that holds up, Sean.
Well,
an absolute classic. I think there's, at least with the older printings of this, there is something kind of cool. This was a cool moment, even if the game itself was a nightmare. The Star Wars VHS game, there was something kind of interesting about assembling that and snapping together pieces and seeing the old cards and the VHS tape in that box. Davis ended up? Yeah, Davis ended up with that copy of that game. That was a trip. So taking a stroll back down memory lane is cool. Also to see kind of where board games have come as in the time since. I do like, by the way, what a company like Restoration Games is doing in taking some of these older classics, some of which are not as well known, and bringing them back into the limelight for a whole new generation. I think that's always cool, a cool thing to do. That fresh coat of paint.
And by the way, speaking of Restoration Games, Alex, tomorrow, you should be sitting down with Rob Davio.
Tomorrow is at the time we're recording this podcast.
Yes, who is one of the co-founders of Restoration Games. So I will remember to edit this in a timely manner and not publish it 3 months later.
That's good because Chocolate Decadence might have to order a Mafia hit.
So so check that out at the end of the week.
All right.
Hopefully.
So that's our talk about classic games. Before we get to our runner-up title, Sean, I want to introduce a new surprise segment. Because in the near future, we're hoping to do maybe a quick, I don't know if this will ruin anything, like a weekly thing, or we'll do it all at once, or what we're going to do with this.
We're trying to shorten the show, right?
I know, but I had this idea of doing, so this is, okay, backstory. Duke Suzanne had long ago recommended a podcast called The Adventure Zone. And this gets into our occasionally role-playing games. This is an RPG podcast. It is done by three brothers from West Virginia and their dad playing through a D&D campaign. Separately, the root podcast is My Brother, and Me. Three brothers in West Virginia who answer advice. They'll take advice from listeners, oftentimes anonymous, with the typical advice column names like Depressed in Dallas or whatever else you might typically have. And then they'll also go onto the Yahoo Answers service and answer just absolutely crazy questions. I was trying to replicate this in some form or fashion by going to Yahoo Answers and clicking on the board game section. Yahoo Answers, by the way, is a desolate wasteland.
It really is.
It's a little sad. What's interesting to me, and maybe not surprising, are the most common questions within board games under that topic are Monopoly, chess questions, and Ouija board questions.
What? What board?
Ouija board.
Isn't it Ouija?
It might be Ouija. I don't know. It's spelled Ouija, but it might be Ouija. Okay. Well, here's the thing. So this is one of the Yahoo Answers questions. This is complete ripoff of My Brother, and Me. So if you listen, you should listen to that podcast. If you already listened to it, this will be familiar. This is from Yahoo Answers user Graham, and Graham says, "How do you use a Luigi board?" Spelled like the Mario brother, Luigi. And it says in the description, "My friend wants to use a Luigi board and I'm kind of scared. I'm worried that I will get haunted and burn in hail." Not hell, hail.
Let's just point out that his pronunciation of Luigi board is closer to Ouija board than your...
We didn't pronounce it. It's an online question. Sean, I do have a question for you.
My point still stands.
Sean, you may be able to help Yahoo Answers user DXDX with this question.
Oh, I know that guy.
How many illegal moves are allowed in chess?
How many illegal?
Yes, are allowed in chess.
That's a tough one. No. Okay.
Yeah. So that gives you a sense of what's going on.
So, are you ready for a moment in Duke history?
Yes.
That has never happened before?
Okay.
You ready for it,
Yeah,
Alex?
let's do it.
Here it is.
Oh, Sean's going to wrap up the segment.
I'm giving you the wrap it up.
Time Cop Dupe Sean, you've been enlisted. You've been enlisted to the cause.
Okay, go on.
Anyway,
but quickly.
Look on our website at some point. We might have a forum for anonymous questions. I'm sure I'll post a thread. We might do a board game advice segment if there's any interest in that, which there may not be, but hey, I think it's a cool idea, even though Sean doesn't.
No, I think it's fine.
As long as it's not Yahoo Answers stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, runner-up titles. The rest of our top 6.
Can I help this week?
Yes, you can. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
And I helped. All right, so Steve O'Rourke, the Dame Father, who Alex apparently hates now.
No, there's no beef here.
He suggested the Test of Time. The Test of Time.
Yes. And by the way, a broader discussion of overall the number of names. If someone comes up with like the very first one is like the one we end up picking and everyone kind of knows it, that's a problem because we were hard pressed to round out a top 6. Not because there weren't some good ones, but just because in terms of sheer numbers, there just weren't that many.
Sure. And I think that's all Daniel Newman's fault. Daniel,
you name one episode and all of a sudden you're meddling with the process.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, that's the one right there. Everyone stop. And by the way,
he was correct. He was correct that was the one.
Absolutely.
But come on, Daniel. Be cool. Jesse Metcalf came in with Fog, spelled F-O-G-G, as in Phileas Fogg. Fog of Yore. I like that one. That was a solid name.
John Giblin suggested Phileas Fog of War.
So war referencing the war track in Signorie.
Yeah.
And Phileas Fogg. So some combos playing off of that one. Todd Kauk came with Old Math, referencing the mathiness of not Hare and Tortoise, but Atwed, the game we reviewed this week.
Yes.
And also older games, which we discussed in our discussion topic.
Right, and it's kind of a play on like new math, anyway. And then finally, BJ from Board Game Gumbo suggested Around the World in 104 Days.
Inside baseball, yeah.
Referencing your trip almost around the world.
No, it was around the world.
Did you come? Oh, yeah, I guess it was around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a around the world ticket.
Nope, sorry, you didn't start and stop in London. You lose.
Oh, dang it. Well, I didn't say it was the out of the book, but all right. Well, fair enough. So that's going to do it for this week's episode, Sean.
Yes, indeed, Alex. I'm excited to see what we got coming out next week. I think Yokohama is a strong possibility.
The thread will already be up by the time this episode comes out.
That's a good point.
So we're reviewing Yokohama next week?
Well, because people don't... They listen to this before they might see it.
Can I say initially?
Yeah.
I'm a little scared.
You should be scared. But that's okay. It's going to be fine. You're totally going to be fine. It looks overwhelming. But anyway, we'll talk more about Yokohama next week, which I'm very excited to get some more plays in of. But that's going to do it then for episode 143, titled Family Jewels. Thanks again to Jimmy DM90 for that fantastic title. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
Those are long hands. Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 11th, 2017. Our theme music is provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Tasty Minstrel Games. Check out all their awesome titles at PlayTMG.com. We'll see you back here in 1 week. Until then, game on! Sean, do you need medical attention?
No, I just need some antihistamines really badly.
Like a bunch of them?
I need
all the antihistamines?
I need them in a giant syringe that can pierce my my breastplate.
Okay.
And enter directly into my heart.
Could you do it straight into the nose? Would that make more sense?
Probably.
Okay.
Not to the heart?
We need a doctor on this show. We just have a lawyer and an unemployed person. and it's not enough medical expertise for this.
There's literally no medical expertise.
Yeah.
For this.
I put on a Band-Aid once.